Greetings. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by Heart and Soul Broadcasting Services. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today I'm in conversation with Joseph Makamba Busha, the Group Chief Executive Officer of J.M. Busha Investment Group. If you enjoy this conversation, remember to subscribe, like, and share. Joseph Busha, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be on your show.
Fantastic. I will take you to, first of all, congratulations for the book that you've written. I always admire people who have the discipline to sit down and write books. You have just done that. We'll get an opportunity to go through some of your thoughts. Let me ask you, why the book? Why did you decide to write this book? The book is called My Thoughts, Africa's Future Begins in Our Minds. Why did you think you ought to write this book?
Sometimes it's always good to tell your own story, so that people get to understand who you are, what you stand for, and what you believe in. So for me, I think at this juncture, it was very important to be able to reflect on African leadership, how far we have come from, if you look in terms of where African countries were roaring into independence, the founding of the OAU was 1963. So this is 60 years later, what has been our achievements and what we look forward for the next 60 years. So I think for me, it was very important, first, as a business leader, but most importantly, as a presidential candidate in Zimbabwe, for people to get to understand what I stand for, what I believe in as a person.
So fantastic. We'll get to unpack a number of things that you put in the book. You've already flagged that you are a presidential candidate for 2023 in Zimbabwe's elections. And the question I have for you is, why do you want to run for office? Why do you want to be the president of Zimbabwe?
The first thing is to complete the triangle of independence, the equilateral triangle of independence. There are three sides. There's the territory independence, then there's the economic independence, then there's the social-political independence. I believe that the two sides that completes our liberation struggle with the social, political, and economic independence are not attained yet. So I think it was important for me, obviously, to say, well, let me pick up from where those who came before us and complete our struggle for self-determination.
And this is not the first time that you are running. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that true?
No, it's not. Yeah.
It's not. When was the last time that you tried to run? And what happened?
I raised my intention in 2018. I didn't really campaign. I think I just voted and flew out of Zimbabwe in 2018. But I think it was really to put my name and say, in 2023, certainly I'll be going to campaign and win the presidential elections. I think in 2015, I did mention as well that I think, Zimbabwe has lost a vacuum of leadership, and I think it needs to be filled. And I think I'm the most suitably qualified person to fill the leadership vacuum in the country.
So it's been something that's been bubbling under as far as you're concerned. It's been an itch that you want to scratch and you want to realize. 2015, 2018. Has your name actually been on the ballot box or on the ballot paper rather, or this is the first time that it's going to be?
Well, it wasn't on the ballot
paper. It was on the
2018. So I was number 4 from the presidential candidate.
How many votes did you get?
So it was President Mnangagwa, Advocate Chamisa, Ms. Thokozani Kope, and I was the 4th. I think it's about 0.4% of the votes.
0.4% of the vote. So you say you believe you are the right person to conclude that triangle that you're talking about for political independence, social, economic. Why you? Why do you think it's you that has the gift to do that?
In every generation, leaders are called. They're called to serve for the common good. And I think purely because of my history and my understanding why we fought for the war, the Ian Smith regime and all the struggles for self-determination that have happened in Africa, we need leaders who are selfless. We need leaders who are present. We need leaders who are caring. Now, if you look in terms of our history as Africa, from the north down here, we all celebrated, the kind of the removal or the ascendance of Africans into the political power. But we never got the economic. So there have been very bad examples of leadership across Africa. And because I think I understand, I contributed to the liberation of Zimbabwe, I think right now, given that institutional memory, given what I have achieved, I represent the aspirations of many, not only in Zimbabwe, but in Africa.
As you're talking, I can hear the politicians' voices different from yours. I understand the aspirations of the people. I want to represent the people. That's what all politicians say. What's different about you?
But do they have the experience? We're no longer talking about really ideologies, or are you with the East or the West? Today we're talking about who's got the economic models, solutions, because the challenge is about economic solutions. It's nothing to do with ideologies, whether you're Marxist or Leninist or capitalist or whatever the case is. But who is well equipped, to be able to find the right socio-economic model for Africa? That's what's missing. So when you look in terms of the leaders that we have today, what do they stand for? Do we know what they stand for? So if you look at the first crop of leaders that came in the 60s, we knew what they stood for. I stand for peace. I stand for equitable development. And I've got a proven record in terms of, the financial systems. I mean, South Africa is the biggest economy in Africa. I understand I've been here for 33 years. So I understand that as a trading partner. And I believe, given my experience, right now, my experience is most needed in Zimbabwe than elsewhere.
So you say in your book, leaders cannot be microwaved or manufactured in a laboratory classroom, but can be groomed and nurtured in natural development. You've rightly gotten the experience in the private sector, 33 years experience you're talking about, but you don't have the political experience of leading. I mean, I'm reminded of Barack Obama with Hillary Clinton being asked the question, what will you do at 3 a.m. when that call comes? You're familiar with markets, but are you familiar with politics? Is the question that I have for you.
So what is politics really, or the political economy? This is really about solving social problems, right? Okay, so we need to be able to say, what are the three pillars that constitute society or that drives a country? The first thing that drives in terms of the socio-economic development is business principles, is being able to manage, capital and the allocation thereof. But also having the emotional intelligence to understand the drivers of society, what happens. So when you talk about in terms of political is really being able to manage people's expectations and deliver what they require to survive in terms of hospitals, in terms of education, social cohesion. I run JM Busha 54, or I founded JM Busha 54, which is an organization that promotes peace through sports, arts, culture, and music. And certainly in terms of empowering people. So that is really the policy we should be talking about. How do you empower people? How do you retain power into the hands of the people. That's what we need to talk about. So if we narrow it into politics, which is really just about ascendance to power, then we're not going to get it anywhere. So what we're saying here is who understands the social structure, it's almost capital structure of a business, okay, where you are able to meet equitably the expectations of people and provide solutions to be able to make sure that they live a better life. That's where we are.
Okay. So we will get to your experience. We'll get to who J.M. Busha is. But I want to go to asking you, is this just about you? Why didn't you join the parties that exist? There's ZANU-PF, there's CCC. Have you looked at these and said, maybe I need, have you looked at them? What conclusions have you made?
So basically, my first experience in politics was in ZANU-PF, SMG, but during the liberation struggles. I didn't go to school between 77 and 79. All my brothers were in the war. Okay, so in 1986, when President Samora Machel died, at that time, it was a turning point. It was almost like, on the eve of our independence, when Tongogara died, then you sit down because you understand the struggle, what's going to happen. So when Samora died, I said, well, he is our biggest, or he was our biggest Sahwira. He was our biggest supporter. Yeah. That's where our bosses were. So who then would President Mugabe then turn to for advice? As you know, our concept of Sahwira in Zimbabwe is the person who intervenes, who comes in to help in the internal matters of a family or of a country. So I was in ZANU-PF, okay, but in 1986 at that stage, I had the sixth sense to believe that ZANU-PF was going to betray the tenets of the liberation struggle. And hence I left ZANU-PF. And in that stage, I made the decision that I would run for president and complete the liberation struggle, kind of principles, and be the second democratically elected president of Zimbabwe.
And you didn't think you should join the other parties that existed then?
The other parties, there was no party there. I mean, we had Comrade Tekere who started Zoom. Then there was Dumbuchena who started the party. Then IMDC was just an idea. I mean, if you look at their website, they say it was just an idea. But certainly, I did not know what they stand for or what they believe in as leaders. So President Mugabe was a nationalist. So he believes in the total independence, or not necessarily total, but in the independence of the African. So I understood what the late Mugabe stood for, and I don't know what the other guys stand for today.
And so is it just going to be, do you have a political party? Are you campaigning for all parliamentary seats, city council? What's your campaign strategy like? So
I belong to FREEZIM Congress. I'm the founder of FREEZIM Congress, so it's a political party. Right. We're not contesting to be...
It's called what?
FREEZIM Congress. Right. So we're not contesting to be runners-up or to have 2 MPs in parliament. I believe I'm the leading candidate. I'm campaigning to win with the alternative governing party in Zimbabwe.
Would you, do you have structures on the ground? Are you present on the ground? To talk to me about that.
Yes, we do. Okay. We do. We're going everywhere. Certainly, I think in the next 2 months or so, it will certainly become apparent to Zimbabweans that freedom is coming at last.
Coming through Free Zimbabwe.
Freedom is coming for all Zimbabweans, freedom and peace, because that's what we need. Yeah. We need to empower people. We need to bring back power to the people. We need to bring freedom to the people. Yeah. We need to bring peace to the people. We need to ask Zimbabweans, how do you feel? Zimbabweans right now, don't they feel, they belong. They don't have a sense of belonging. So we said we're fighting to get our resources back. We're fighting to get our land back. But today, I don't believe that the empowerment is going to Zimbabweans, because the mines are not going to Zimbabwe. So we need to reclaim. We need to reclaim our resources. We need to reclaim our land. We need to work the land so that Zimbabwe becomes a breadbasket of Africa again.
And who is your team? What's your team?
Well, the team, we're going to reveal it at the media, when we launch the party officially for the 2023 campaign.
Right.
But I can assure you that we have a team made up of men and women who've got the right skill set, the right attitude, and certainly who've got the history to fight for equality in Zimbabwe.
So when are you going to reveal it? When are you going to be revealing them? When is the press gathering going to be?
In May.
In May. Yep. Are you not leaving it late? Because the elections are only a few months right down the line. And if I don't know who your team is, I wonder who out there knows who your team is. Are you not leaving this too late?
No, well, it all depends on strategy, really. Okay, so the same question was asked of me in 2018, but I did better than the 23 candidates. I believe the wannabes in Poland, to do what I did. So I believe we've got a strategy.
What's that strategy?
Well, the strategy really is that we get to people and we get to tell them why they should be part of us. And I think they know. You don't need to tell any Zimbabweans today that their future is being destroyed, that they're being deprived of their dignity. They did not to be told that. So I think Zimbabweans have just been waiting for a leader who is genuine, authentic, and who understands and ready to serve them. It's all about serving.
Yeah.
Leadership is about serving.
When was the last time you had a rally and you met people? When was the last time you met with people who, like you're saying, they're ready for you?
I meet people every single day.
Yeah.
There are lots of Zimbabweans here in South Africa. There are lots of Zimbabweans in Botswana, Mozambique. I'm in the villages almost every second weekend. So I'm in Zimbabwe every single weekend. So I meet people all the time.
I want to push you. And with all sincerity, you meet people all the time. I've never heard about you. So, and I represent a lot of people out there who are registered voters who have never heard about you. So, what's your pushback? Why don't I know you? Why don't I know that Mr. Busha is running to be president? You want to be my president, isn't it?
I'm going to be president for everybody. I'm going to be president for President Mnangagwa. I'm going to be president for Advocate Shamisa. I'm going to be president for all Zimbabweans. And I'm going to be president for Africans, all Africans. So for me, Zimbabwe is just a starting point. But I think it's for us to say, where do we do? The reason why you don't know me, because I think you were not ready to meet your president. So I'm very happy today that you found time to meet your president one-on-one.
We're going to take a break here, Mr. President. Please join us after the break when we go deeper into who Joseph Busha is. Don't go away.
To Zimbabweans and to Africans, I'm giving up what I've built to go and serve.
Imagine getting free access to the Newsday, the Standard, the Zimbabwe Independent, and the Weekly Digest for a full month. Well, you can. And all you need to do is download the Newsday e-reader app on Google Play Store or scan the Newsday QR code in any of the AMH print publications and start enjoying the quality content. Usasaririrewe, famba ne Time, famba ne Chokwadi, famba ne e-paper.
Welcome back to our conversation with Joseph Busha. So let's get to know who Joseph Busha is. Where were you born?
I was born in Mtoko at Oso's Mission in 1964.
Mm-hmm. And talk to us about your upbringing, the things that have contributed to the person that you've become.
Well, so there's only, a few things that makes a person, right? Honesty, integrity, and hard work. So we grew up as peasant farmers. We were farming. Actually, my mother was Farmer of the Year for 5 years in a row in our area. So when you go there, I went there 2 weeks ago. I met a gentleman I haven't seen since 1979. That's the first thing he said.
Right.
As I was going towards Makaha, if you know that area, like the opposite of Nyamapanda, between Mutare or Manika and Nyamapanda. So I went there because that's where I grew up before we moved to Morewa, which is where I stay now.
And high school, which schools did you go to?
I went to Seka High and Vanona High School. So that's where I went. And then I went to University of Zimbabwe and Wits.
Yeah. And I'm trying to, because the way we are brought up has a big bearing on who we become. What are the things that when you look back and you say, those are the values that were handed over to me by my parents, what would that be?
Community and family.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm community-centered. As I said to you. So we basically were the center of provision of food or leadership in the agricultural or production sector. So I am production-centered, not consumption. So if you look at it in Zimbabwe right now, that's why I believe I'm the best candidate for Zimbabwe. We're just consumers. We're consumers of goods and services. We're consumers of education. We can't even apply what we have learned. Today, Zimbabwe, which is supposed to be the breadbasket of Africa, we cannot feed ourselves. But also, in terms of where I say application of the knowledge, we have not even moved towards making a tractor or some of the parts, because if agriculture is going to be the center of our revival, okay, we have to be manufacturing some of those things. So for me, I think the principles really was provision, service to the community, where you need to make sure that you are who you are because of others, the Ubuntu, kind of culture, and where you share with the community. So when you're a leader, I believe leaders pay all the time. You pay in terms of your time. You don't sleep. You just think, how can I make the child next door's life better? And I think those are the principles that I learned from my parents. So it's hard work, independence, and certainly giving.
Okay. You went to the University of Zimbabwe. Let's talk now about your university education and the inspiration for you did maths, eh?
I'm a statistic and
just talk to me about that part of your life.
Well, if you do mathematics, and this is not saying other disciplines are not good enough, certainly it opens all the doors, because I think if you look in terms of technology, if you take in terms of the universe, it's all about physics, it's all about mathematics, and that's really the basis of any development we can. So I did mathematics and statistics. I came to University of Wits. I did actuarial science. And then I went to Warwick Business School. I did industrial mathematics and more to do with investment and capital markets. I did short courses at Harvard. So all those I took myself to, by the way. So in other words, I paid for my own school fees, and apart from high school and stuff like that. So I worked and paid for my own school fees. So for me, that really just showed obviously the tenacity and the independence of doing that. By the way, I did grade 7 at 17 years after the war. So I went back to school to continue with my studies, whereas most people who were Mujibas, either they chose to go into the camps or to join support units, the police services and so on. But for me, I think, as I said to you, the basis really was the principles, the characteristics, the things I learned from my teachers. And my first teachers were my mother and my father before, my current teachers and the other teachers that came thereafter, which is in my book.
Fascinating. You mentioned being a Mujiba twice now. Talk to me about that part of your life. Where did you operate? And what memorable stuff can you share with us?
Well, that whole part really taught me why we are battling today.
How old were you when you were in Mujiba?
15, 16.
Okay.
Yep.
And beer? Talk to me about the experiences and where you operated.
Well, so as I said to you, I was in Mutoko. So the area basically is you go, I don't know if you know Marcos, I don't know how much you know about Mutoko district as you go to Maka.
Yeah.
But, in 1977, so Ian Smith set up with the KIPs, the forced KIPs. Okay, so that's where most people were. But obviously my brothers all had left at that particular time. So all you do is, at 6 o'clock, you are asked to go out, and at 6 o'clock, you must all go back. Okay, and the older boys and sometimes and girls, obviously, you will be supporting our liberators, which we called Mukwanamkoma at that stage. So you would go into the mountains and help carry things, food, whatever you'll be carrying. And at that time, when you're young, you could not go to school. I remember 2 of my aunties, that were studying in Harare. Once you go back there, you were not allowed, and they have to whisk you out to go to school. So most of my colleagues at that stage, we didn't go to school between 77 and 79.
Let's go now to you say you've got the experience, and I want us to go to your business experience, the companies that you have formed. Just walk us through what you're doing at the present moment, the companies that you're running, if you may.
So I left the university and went to work in corporate investment banking. That's where I worked. So basically it's corporate finance, structural finance, project finance.
With which bank?
Well, Standard Corporate Merchant Bank.
Okay.
That's what I started with. And then I went to HSBC. And from HSBC 1999, I moved to start my own business, JM Busha Investment Group. So all we do basically is, the 3 arms of financial services: investment banking, advisory services and so on, asset management, and life insurance. That's what we do currently. And we are in about 6 countries in SADC. That's where
which are those countries?
Eswatini, Lesotho, Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and SA being our head office.
Mm-hmm. And how big, what are the funds under management, the staff that you employ and that kind of stuff? So
we had a big restructuring in terms of business just after the COVID, but we're a mid-sized business. I think if you look in terms of South Africa, we're the oldest kind of black-owned financial institution, because I think when I started in 1999, it was not fashionable for us to venture into that industry. But I'm grateful.
So how many members of staff do you have right now?
We scaled down. We're 32. We're currently sitting at about 15.
And funds under management?
That also has dwindled. It's just about $1 billion. Yeah.
Okay. So it's been dwindling.
Yep.
I've been also struck by the fact that you tend to call most of your businesses by your name. JM Busha Football Club, JM Busha 54. What's the thinking?
Well, when you look at it that way, it's really where, businesses, people buy into a person. You don't buy into something else. And I don't know why Africans, we're pretty much scared to be proud of who we are and to get people to identify us for who we are, okay? We don't ask about JP Morgan. We don't ask about other businesses that are named after the people. Most of the legal firms are named after the individuals because you're buying into the person. You're buying into the person's ability to deliver. So for me, I did not want to scratch my mind to say, well, I'm going to call my company Prudence. It's easy to just call JM Busha.
But also, is it not an ego thing?
No.
It isn't.
There's nothing to do with ego.
Yeah.
But I think it's to do that I'm going to take responsibility and accountability because you're putting your name out there. Yeah.
I'm still wanting to help people out there understand their president. And trying to find, to zero in on when you look at Zimbabwe right now, what are the 3 things that absolutely trouble you, that you as president and your party say these things need to be sorted out? Point number 1. Point number 2, how are those things going to be sorted out? How would you be able to sort out those things?
So the thing that troubles me about Zimbabwe is peace. And peace is not the absence of war. we need to make sure that our people are free and they're at peace with themselves, because only when you're free and at peace, you become the best of what you can be.
Right.
So I want our children not to be hustling around, trying to get a passport to go into other countries to just earn a living. So that's what troubles me. How do we take our resources, beneficiate our resources, and create new industries to be able to be the leading? Zimbabwe is the largest holder of lithium or battery-related metals in Africa, and possibly in the top 10 in the world. But we're not a net exporter of batteries or energy solutions in Zimbabwe. So that's what we need to do. We need to get our engineers at NAST, at USE, at all the universities to be able to give them a chance, but make sure that we've got the platform and the infrastructure for research and development so that we are able to add and beneficiate to what God gave us, which are the mineral resources. So that troubles me to say.
So that's peace.
So yeah, peace and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and certainly empowering the people. So the second one is really the economy. We need to make sure that the economy are in the hands of the majority, and we contribute not only to Zimbabwe, to Africa and the world in terms of socio-economic development.
How are you going to make sure that that happens?
So the first thing, when you're president of a country, you need to have a strategy. You need to have a plan. You need to have an inclusive project, inclusive strategy, inclusive plan to engage everybody to be economically active. Right now, we've got an extractive system that only benefits a few. So you need to include everybody. When you do that, your GDP, the value of the country, certainly improves. Now, as I said to you earlier on, we need to create a new industry. We cannot rely on industries where we cannot have a competitive advantage. We might not even compete with South Africa on agriculture because they've got an advanced manufacturing sector. And they do produce lots of machinery, which we don't. So I think what we need to do for our side is really to move into the renewable energy space, because we have the resources to be able to do that. South Africa has got platinum, which they control about 80% of the world's platinum. And Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Russia controls about 96% of the world platinum. But we don't control, just like the oil-producing countries do, control the price of oil. So I believe as Zimbabwe, we need to start shifting, to move to where our natural resources are, and then use that, which is really renewable energy and agriculture. I want Zimbabwe to be the breadbasket of Africa again.
Talk to me now. You ran in 2018, and you say you got 0.3%.
Number 4, yes.
Number 0.3%. What lessons did you learn from that? What message did that give you?
Well, the lessons really, as I said to you, I didn't campaign. I need to be on the ground with people. What lesson it gave me is that, yes, I can. And I can move from number 3, number 4 to number 1. So the lesson really, it gave me lots of courage, lots of expectations, and the idea that it is possible.
Why didn't you campaign?
At that stage, basically, I wasn't ready. So you talked earlier on about a team. You need to be able to build a team of people who believe in themselves. Currently, Zimbabweans are not giving. There is an attitude of Zangu Zaita perspective. You've got young people who are joining the ruling party, not that believe in building the country, but they believe in getting things for free. That's what the problem is. So it has been very difficult today to be able to get Zimbabweans who are selfless, who are giving, who are prepared to sacrifice and do something for the country. So if I were to use JF Kennedy, ask not what you can do for your country, that's what you should ask. So I'm asking Zimbabweans, don't ask what your family or community or country can do for you. It's what you can do for them.
Have you been able to find that team of young Zimbabweans who have the passion that you have, who are prepared to sacrifice, to give to their country. Have you found those people?
I think we have now. I think we've got a very nice mixture of young and old, people who are able to give up. I think you'd understand, Mr. Ncube, that a lot of people in Zimbabwe, they've got, in government, they've got nothing to give up. They're not giving up anything at all. So what I'm saying to Zimbabweans and to Africans, I'm giving up what I've built to go and serve. Okay. How do you take a person who does not have a mbuzi, huku, a house, to say that they want to be president? They're not giving up anything. They actually want to gain more by being in government. So I'm saying, with my experience, with what I've achieved, I'm prepared to say, I want to share my knowledge, my experience in terms of how to create employment, how to create pension. Because if you've never employed somebody, you don't understand what it is to create a pension. Okay? So Zimbabweans or any person, you need job security because that gives you income security. When you've got income security, it gives you retirement security, which is pension security. Now, if you look at some of the candidates, they were looking for cars. They went to join Pollard so they can get diplomatic passports and cars so they can fly for the first time. And for us, I think it's quite dangerous, where we look for people who want to gain more than giving, which I said earlier on. Leaders pay all the time. You pay through sweat, through leadership, through sacrifice, through sleepless nights, whilst you are thinking on how best to solve the problems of the country or your family or your business.
We're going to take a break there. And when we come back, I'm going to be asking you, I really want to know who else is in your team. So when we come back, I'm going to press you on that. Please don't go away. We come back and join us on this conversation with Mr. Busha.
I wrote to the US ambassador in 2017 when former President Donald Trump renewed ZDERA. And I said they need to remove ZDERA.
Welcome back to our conversation with Joseph Busha, the Group CEO for GM Busha and also presidential candidate for the elections in Zimbabwe in 2023. I want to push you and ask you, leadership is not always about one man.
Yes.
So there is prospective President Busha, but who is behind him? Who are the men and women that are going to stand with him? Because one person cannot change a country. Are you at liberty to name one or two people that you're working with?
Well, our vice president is Jakim Moyo. He's based in Bulawayo. So we have Mr. Msipa in Berengwa. So we've got leadership across the country. Musha in Manicaland, Adelaide Mhlanga in Kulumane, in Bulawayo. So I think the leadership structure has been formed is there. We're basically just waiting to ratify and announce them. I think you've seen some of the parties as to doing their primaries.
Yeah.
So they cannot announce until they finish their primaries.
Right.
So our process is different where we're not having public primaries before we can announce. So it's exactly the same. But at least for the vice president, Mr. Moyo is the vice president of our party.
Thank you for sharing those names. There are a number of contentious issues in Zimbabwe, and I would love to hear what position you take on that. There is the controversial issue of sanctions. Where do you stand as far as the issue of sanctions?
I wrote to the US ambassador in 2017 when former President Donald Trump renewed ZDERA. And I said, they need to remove ZDERA. They need to remove sanctions. Sanctions have never worked anywhere. As a tool to force any government to do whatever the case is, sanctions have never worked anywhere else. Sanctions only hurt the people, the country, the citizen, the ordinary man on the streets. So I don't believe in sanctions at all. I believe sanctions must be removed henceforth. And I actually used my lawyers to be able to submit that letter to the US Embassy in Zimbabwe. So I'm totally anti-sanctions.
Okay. The other issue, thank you for that. The other issue is land. I think we have a problem whereby we continue to see instances of land being occupied by people that are sympathetic to the ruling party or advancing the interests of individuals and so forth. So it looks like the land issue is still open-ended. What view do you take to resolving the land issue?
So the land issue, that needs to stop. Land is a non-depleting asset, and that's the most valuable asset Zimbabwe has today. So the land grabs and also just benefiting the elite. As I said, Zimbabwe right now is a very extractive system, by the elite. So that needs to stop, because it does basically two things. It disturbs food production and food security, okay? And also it just puts people at unease. That's why I said there's lack of peace in Zimbabwe, because you don't know your status in terms of the land. And I guess it might go into issues of property rights. So the land issue needs to be resolved. And I think we need to make sure that kind of transition, or the adjustment and the land grab, for Zimbabwe to move forward, I think we need to be able to conclude that. I believe one family, one farm. That's what I believe in. I believe that no student studying agriculture at an agricultural college should not have a job, should look for a job. They must be attached to a farm, all of them, and be part of that system in terms of empowerment. So that's one of the things we're going to resolve. We fought for the land, and that the land must save everybody. Not that everybody must own, but at least they must benefit through food production, subsidized food production.
And another contentious issue, as you will know, is that the military in Zimbabwe, because of their role in the liberation struggle, have a sense of entitlement that nobody's going to go to State House without their approval. And there's a sense that you need to have some form of understanding and accommodation with the military for you to be able to walk to State House should you win the election. Have you applied your mind to that issue, and what view do you take?
So the security forces and the military is the last defense of the constitution of Zimbabwe and of the country, and understands that the leadership would understand the constitution. And if they understand the tenets of the liberation struggle, why Zimbabwe went to war, why so many people, known and unknown, died for Zimbabwe, then I think they will respect the will of the people. I believe that, if the right candidate, of which I am, comes who understands the history, who participated in that, but also who represent, as I said earlier on, the aspirations, not only of the rest of the citizens, but the citizens, including the children of the people in the security forces, comes along. I don't think, they will say no to the will of the people. And I think now Zimbabwe is ripe for that, because, as I said to you, this idea really that, we need to take over the baton came 1986. And I remain resolute to the idea and the reality that I think right now in Zimbabwe, with this age-wise and understanding of the history, I think there's no one better than me.
There's no one better than you. Turning to your book, you use a quote from the French philosopher whose name I can't pronounce, but I'm sure you know how to pronounce it. And I love this quote because it represents where we are now. And the quote is this, and I quote, "The tyranny of a prince in an oligarchy is not so dangerous to the public welfare as the apathy of a citizen in a democracy." Your campaign is going to be facing the apathy of the Zimbabwean citizenry. How are you going to overcome that?
We got to appeal. We have to appeal for anybody to be able to be relevant in Zimbabwe. The citizens must know and feel that you are speaking for them. Okay? I believe I'll be able to speak for the young. I believe I'll be able to speak for people of my generation. I believe I'll be able to speak the language business understands. I'll be able to speak the language the war veterans understand. I'll be able to speak the language our traditional leaders understand, because I'm an integral part of them. I'm a child of the African Democratic Revolution. I'm a very disciplined child of that. And because of my understanding of how we were brought up as Africans in terms of our way of life, values, and culture, I think for me that just basically puts me in a good stead, with the rest of the candidates. Because if you look from a generation perspective and just understanding, the guys we used to call Anankoma and our leaders in the liberation struggle, the majority is between 60 and 70, in terms of the ones that were young ones. So once you skip a generation, then there's a problem, because there's no continuity or carrier of that message. I believe I'm the carrier of that message right now.
The beauty about your book, Africa's Future Begins in Our Minds. I mean, it's a book that I wish I had written myself. But the hurdle is, how do you convince us that our future is in our minds when we are so fixated on everything that is foreign? When we don't love ourselves, when we still look to our colonial masters as the model of what we ought to be doing, when we think that anything Chinese is what we ought to be doing. This is a truism. Our future is in our minds, but how do you convince us that our future is in our minds and we act that conviction? Should we have that conviction?
Everything starts in our minds. And that's a thought. That's what's called my thoughts. Everything begins in the minds. Okay. So when our founding fathers believe that now is time to take over control of our own destiny, take political power, then they group together, one nation after the other, we liberate ourselves. When you started as a businessman within the industry you are in, which is education, because the public education industry is education. You educate people. You're just as good as teachers, right? Okay. You have done it as a business person. So you believed that I can do it. So you have to believe in it, and you have to create the environment to do that. You have to volunteer yourself to be able to go beyond. So I say in that book, if you were to ask an African child that, listen, you can actually start the next supersonic plane, possibly a blank face will stare at you because they can't imagine that happening. What I'm saying to you, we can go beyond. We can go beyond that. All we need to do is to get a leadership that is futuristic, and in particular respect science and research and development. Let's put money into R&D so that our young men and women can come and excel there. So if you look in terms of Facebook, WhatsApp, all these other new kind of platforms, they're funded by young people.
Yeah.
Okay. And they did not need any material. All it needed basically was the mind to say, how do I communicate? How do I find a solution? I went to Germany in 2004, and I realized, I went on a tour, by the way. So I realized that rural Germany uses more solar energy than Africa, yet we've got more sun. Okay, I had 3 weeks of just traveling Europe to get to understand the rural part and the town part. So I think it's possible. We just need leaders who believe and who provide the platform for our young people to do that.
You have an interesting, a big section in your book where you talk about transformational leaders, where you talk about positive consequential leaders, and then you talk about negative consequential leaders. Just talk to me about, it's a big chunk of the book. Talk to me about your thinking as far as that section is concerned.
So at the beginning, in the 60s, all the leaders that founded the African world, that started the fight, presented an Africa that is good for everybody. So they looked transformational. They wanted to transform our state, the status quo at that stage, to make sure that we're all inclusive. So transformational leaders are inspirational. They transform a situation for the better. They are engaging. They are fast thinkers. And they're inclusive. Mm-hmm. Now, consequential leaders are those leaders that come through as a result of something missing, as a consequence. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the vacuum leadership you see today is a result of a lack of leadership. That's why you've got more than 20 candidates in Zimbabwe, because everybody sees themselves as a mirror. There's no more standards. Okay, because everybody thinks, well, I can do it because the standard is so low. Okay, because there's a vacuum. So consequential leaders basically is either positive. Positive, if you're running a company, you can turn it around. But negative consequential leaders, they'll make things worse. So if I give examples there in terms of negative consequential leaders, in Africa, that really took us back. You've got Charles Taylor, you've got Francois Ngwema in Burkina Faso. You had even Kamuzu Banda, who was one of the first, or if not the first medical doctor. But when he came into Malawi, he became negative. Everything was about him, and he could not transform the country to be inclusive.
I have one pushback on your one transformational leader here, and that is Muammar Gaddafi. Why do you say Muammar Gaddafi was a transformational leader? Help me understand that.
So I rank Sirisa Khama is the most transformational leader in Africa, followed by Muammar Gaddafi. The reason why I say Muammar Gaddafi is because he was able to provide for his countrymen, right? They had free electricity, they had water. If you had trained as a teacher and you don't have a job, they will give you the money of a teacher. So for me, we need to be able to live what the world thought, but was he providing for his countrymen? Did they have the basic human necessities like water, electricity, housing? Yes, they did. So he certainly was flamboyant and so on, but certainly he was able to transform his country to not be dependent of the West, which we are, or the East.
So you look aside the abuse of human rights, his dictatorial style, and so forth. It's all part of getting to the destination of.
No, really. I think if you read the book, you'll be able to say what were the key. I tried to measure to say what were the tangible things he did for his people and rank them according to that. So if you look at President Mugabe, say, for example, in Zimbabwe, he was able to bring education to the masses and certainly the land reform. So those were his two achievements. Those are things he was able to transform to make sure that the literacy rate and the education levels in Zimbabwe are high. So the human rights, we're not going to put them away, and that is really a big concern, that we don't want human rights violators, but certainly we should work on the good they did and move away from all the human rights abuses. And hence I talk about peace. So if there is violation of human rights, then there's no peace in the country. So we also need then to say, when you look to say those that is reported and the things, since he was taken out, he was killed in Libya. Libya is very unstable.
The other argument I'll have with you, and then push back as much as possible, is that you put Nelson Mandela under a positive consequential leaders and not a transformational leader.
Well, so what, President Mandela was a good leader, but I think, he left us with hope, but hope is not a strategy or a plan. Okay. So there's still lots of racism in South Africa. So he created, obviously, that we need to be all united. We need to be together. But if you look at instance of racism in South Africa, even in 2022, you've got students at Stellenbosch who are abusing African students. You had that also at Orange Free State University in 2007. You have policemen in 1997, 1996 who were training dogs on Africans, Mozambicans, and that should not happen in an independent African state. You still have massive inequality, the Gini coefficient in South Africa, where you have massive lots of South Africans who are poor, in Alex, in all the things. So certainly, he tried to bring reconciliation, but I think it's more of the Africans who accepted the other races, who wanted to reconcile well with the other races than the opposite. So certainly, I think that project didn't succeed. But in terms of, giving what we were fighting for, the land, the economy, there was no change. So there was no transformation there. Hope is not a strategy.
I disagree. But, that's the whole thing about, having a conversation with a prospective presidential candidate. We can disagree and agree.
100%. I love that, yeah.
And be free to walk alive afterwards, eh?
But also leaders must be courageous. We must be able to be bold enough so that people understand where we sit. And that's the reason why I wrote the book. So I know, as I said to you, I loved former President Mandela. Actually, bought his long walk to freedom. But, we should be able to be bold enough, to be frank enough to say, did we achieve what we wanted to achieve? And, by me saying that, he was not transformational. He was positive consequential. He was a product of circumstances. Does not mean that he was not a good person. He was an awesome person, but he did not achieve much for us.
Wow, I disagree. But anyway, so my thoughts. Africa's future begins in our minds. Great book.
Thank you.
Food for thought, as all books should be. What's the one idea that you would want people to walk away with after having read this book? Yes, it's about Africa's future begins in our minds. It's a powerful thing. What other thing do you want people to walk away with after having read this book?
Change begins with you. That all of us as Africans, we should not celebrate too quickly. The journey towards total self-determination is not complete, but also we need to be able to live by our way of life, our faith, our customs. We need to give. We need to care for each other. We need to move away from basically being materialistic and make consumers of goods and services and contribute. We kind of reclaim our language because our language was distorted. We don't have an alphabet in the letters of our own characters to be able to, write and, the spoken word. So those things we might not be able to recreate to say, what was our language? Because, you've got our English alphabet, you've got the Arabic alphabet, you've got the Chinese characters and other, but what do we use? We use, the B in my cinema the same as the B in Britain. So our language was destroyed. But what we can do today is be able to make sure that we integrate and speak to our leaders, traditional leaders, so that we can get our culture and values back. But most importantly, also integrate our conflict resolution mechanisms in terms of how we would deliver justice in Africa, because we use the Roman Dutch law. We don't use the traditional leaders, to solve our social problems. So we need to reclaim our own dignity and remold our own identity. So if you look at North Africa, say, for example, they still kind of live by their culture. There was a very strong sense of them being who they are. Whereas in Southern Africa, pretty much we're very Eurocentric. So I want to say, everything begins with you. Be the leader.
Wow, that's powerful, that. So you sound very confident that you are going to win. Supposing it doesn't happen, what are you going to do next?
Well, right now, I think the question is to be able to engage, to actively engage government, to say, whoever will be in government, how do we find solutions together? Because no one man or one individual is going to...
So you'll be prepared to work with whoever wins, would you?
Well, I'm going to win and I'll work with them.
Supposing you don't win.
Yeah, so if I don't win, I get an outright majority. I certainly work with the parties that got the most votes. So currently in Zimbabwe, there are 4 political parties. There's ZANU-PF, which is the ruling party. There's MDCT, there's CCC, there's the FREEZIM Congress. But from a presidential perspective, I believe I'm the leading candidate.
There's also Robert Chapman with his Democratic Union of Zimbabwe.
Okay,
There's
so
also,
I'm not going to comment about that.
Yeah.
So we had Tekere, we had Maimujuru, we had Dr. Ngosana, We've got all those guys in Poland. So don't worry about that. So there are 3 candidates in Zimbabwe. There's myself, Joseph Makamba Busha, there's President Mnangagwa, and there's Advocate Chamisa.
Wonderful. Before I let you go, I know you've written a book. Are there books that you'd want to recommend to our viewers that you've read that have shaped your thinking? Any 2 or 3 books that you've read that you'd recommend to our viewers?
So there's Natural Born Leaders. I gave it to somebody, and I think the person took that book away. So I think that is a very
Natural Born Leaders. Who wrote that book? Do you remember?
I can't remember.
Okay, that's fine.
But it's a fantastic book. If you want to do that. And another one, I think.
Do you think you're a natural born leader?
I think I'm a natural born leader.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there are very few. They come in between, far in between, and I'll name them. You get each generation will produce certain leaders, certainly. But also, it was the Gandhi book and Malcolm X. So Malcolm X is one of my teachers.
Mm-hmm. And Gandhi too.
Well, my teachers are my parents. Okay. Malcolm X and Mother Teresa and Ntate Kgalema Motlanthe.
Thank you so much. We wish you the best in your campaign.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be watching you, and you're obviously hoping, wishing you the best. So thank you so much for creating the time.
I invite you to the inauguration in advance.
Wow, thank you. Allow me to turn over now to our viewers, Mr. Busha, who are all over the world, who follow this show. We are a weekly show. We are out on Mondays. 7 a.m. Central African time. To ensure that you don't miss out on any of this quality conversation, please, I invite you to click on this button and subscribe. When you subscribe, you'll get an alert every time we have one of these quality conversations. We see your comments, we see your suggestions as to who should come onto the program, and we appreciate that. Keep them coming. Thank you so much for your support. Until next time, cheers to you all.